folks. Thanks for joining our Monday Mind Share. We're dialing in right from the harbor of here of Catalina. We've got the Catalina 50-mile 50K race on this weekend. And we're actually right also at the beginning of the Catalina Channel swim, which one of our athletes, Debbie Collingwood, last year got that done, I think, in a little over 17 hours from here. And we'll show you a video right across to the mainland, I think about a marathon that way across the city. Well, today, this is the beginning of 2024, of course, and everyone's talking about resetting, setting their new goals for the year and what have you. We're going to talk this morning about metabolic reset. And particularly, we're going to talk about programming that into your plan, your daily plan. It's not about just by chance rolling into it. We're going to program that in. And there's 3 tips we're going to talk about. I will have all the study links that are associated with these 3 tips below in the video, so you can check that out later. The 3 program areas is going to be around behaviors, around 1+3 foods, and also about 3 accelerators, things that accelerate metabolic rate. So with that, let's jump into it. Okay, the first one is about behaviors, about programming certain behaviors that will increase metabolic rate. And for this, there's really 3 things we want to talk about. One is quality sleep. The second is also about what we not so much want to eat less of, but more about the programming, the window of when we eat through the day to increase metabolic rate. And then the last one is all about programming strength training. So let's firstly talk about sleep. Now, deprivation of sleep is the first thing that will trigger overconsumption, and also typically snacking gets increased as we get a deprivation of sleep. And the type of snacking also tends to trend towards high carbohydrate foods. Of course, these things play around with hormonal rhythms. The best thing you can do is to program the start of your day when you're going to rise and the end of the day when you're going to hit the sack. This is important to get the rhythms, the circadian rhythm, into flight each day, day in, day out, to help facilitate an improved metabolic rhythm and a metabolic rate. The second area is around programming the eating window. Now, this is, like I said earlier, it's not about eating less to improve the metabolic rate. This is more about having a window where consumption is going to happen and where it's not going to happen. Easiest way to do this, of course, is at the start of the day is to work out when is typical for you, the start of the day. Program that 12-hour period. Generally speaking, it's said for intermittent fasting that you really want to have a 12-hour window of eating and a 12-hour window where you're not eating. That can be extended up to 16 hours. But in simple terms, think about if it's 7 a.m. in the morning where you would begin for food consumption through the day, that would finish then at 7 p.m. at night. You would sleep through the night, and then the following morning, of course, you get a workout in. 7 a.m. onwards, you can begin eating again and have that window. That's going to help create every day a consistent consumption of food, and also is what will trigger every day fat oxidation at the beginning of the morning as you've had that 12 hours behind you where you haven't eaten anything. It'll also begin to generate some ketones at that time of the day where you've been off food for that long. And the third piece on programming is strength training. Now, this is important about muscle. It's not about so much muscle mass, but what can happen with endurance athletes, of course, is we can get into too much cardio. It can create a catabolic state, and that catabolic state can see also just the reduction of appetite, the reduction of mood and muscle loss, and all of these things, of course, is not supportive of improving metabolic rate. We want to increase not so much muscle mass, but we certainly want to retain muscle. Muscle is what's going to increase the metabolic rate. So we do want to increase that 1 to 2 sessions per week. I promise you at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a single 1-page template that you can download, put up on the wall, make it really simple, program it into your phone or your watch, etc., to help you program these behaviors into the day. All right, let's jump now into the 3 areas. There's, like I said, it's going to be 1+3 foods. So what's the 1? Well, it's not really a food, it's water. And there's 20 years of studies on this. It's really interesting. And essentially, by increasing the water intake, and typically they say 3 times per day, 500 mils. Easiest way to do this is 30 minutes before your meal. Increase your water consumption. Take a 500 mils, thereabouts, into the body. It has a thermogenic effect. The body has to process it. It obviously has a cooling effect. So the body has to increase the metabolic rate to deal with that water. So 3 times a day, you want to increase the water. That's the first thing. The second area to program is that about protein. Now, it needs to be 3 times a day. You need to program this into your daily meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the way to do this easy, of course, is pick from your meats, whether that's fish, meat, protein, chicken, what have you. That's one option. The second option is eggs, and the third option is a whey protein isolate like you have in our S-Fuels Revival. Program these across the day. That's what's going to facilitate getting that protein in. Protein's fairly interesting. It's the satiety that it has in the stomach. It actually, the next meal or the postprandial trend is that you wouldn't actually have as much food after having protein in the last meal. So that's why we want to have this. It also has, by nature, it takes a lot to actually digest protein. There's an energetic pluses and minuses of taking that much protein in each day. So this is important to actually take protein in 3 times a day, quality lean protein. Now, obviously, with S-Fuels athletes, etc., we know the routine in terms of carbohydrates. We certainly don't want to be binging on, high glycemic index carbohydrates. This is, of course, your white flours, white sugars. This is, of course, your simple sugars, baking, etc. Anytime we're going to raise that insulin level from those types of foods, it will begin to lay down fat. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to lay down muscle in order to increase our metabolic rate. So keep those things off the table. From an order perspective, the simple way to do this, have your water like we talked about, have your protein, and then after you've had that, think about your starches, whether that's in vegetable or fruits and what have you. That's going to help you to have the order right, that you're not over binging on just high caloric, carbohydrate-led foods in your diet. Okay, so let's talk about the third area we want to program, and these are some metabolic accelerators. These are specific foods, and they're actually things that we have mostly anyway, so it's not that hard, but it's more about the amount of it we want to have that can really help accelerate and trigger metabolic rate and up level it another level. Now, we've talked a lot about caffeine in the past. It's the first one to think about. Now, really with caffeine as a trigger, we know that it increased both the breakdown of fats and it can also increase the transport and the oxidation of fat in the mitochondria. Now, to do that, though, we need a certain level, and you should be thinking in rough terms, to make it simple for you at this time of the season, 3 or 4 times a day. You want to be thinking about some caffeine input, and whether that's coming through coffee, through like our primed S-Fuels primed product where it's a known dose, or from teas, and we'll talk more about teas in a second. You want to be programming across the day how those different intakes of caffeine come in. Obviously, in the front half of the day, it's going to be more conducive to upregulating both mood and fat oxidation in the start of the day. And then in the latter end of the day, obviously you want to hold back on caffeine as we begin to think about obviously finishing the day and hitting the bed. The second area to program is that about catechins. Now, these are the flavonols that you'll find in teas, particularly green tea, white tea, certainly in black tea, but green tea and white tea most particularly. The difference between the green and the white is the caffeine content. Very little caffeine in a white tea. But the green tea, start on that in the morning, and in the afternoon you can have either a decaf green tea or you can have a white tea, etc. And I'm going to show you in this one page a way you can insert that into the program and really facilitate getting those catechins in. These are very known in multiple studies showing their ability to upregulate lipolytic enzymes, which are basically breaking down fat tissue and then releasing that into the blood to be used as energy. The last area to program is that of spices. Now, of all the different chilies you can choose from, probably the Thai green or red chili. This is a small chili, etc., but it has the highest level of the capaceins in it. And the capaceins is really what's responsible for that typical heat sensation we have in the mouth, but it's also what's responsible for upregulating the metabolic rate. Now, I think some folks, of course, have a reaction to this in the gut, and if you do, you want to avoid it. But easily to incorporate into the foods by putting it into a shake in the morning, or putting it into an omelet, or into your lunch or your dinner, whatever it is. But once a day, I think sufficient just to get a hit of those capaceins into the diet, whether, as I say, that's in a shake, in an omelet, or in a meal that you have during the day. Okay, so what does this look like when you have it all on a page? Let's just jump now to show you here what the template looks like. Okay, so on the left, firstly you can see you just break the day, the 24-hour day, into early morning, mid-morning, lunch, afternoon, and then you've got your dinner and your evening. Break out the day and really look at those different windows and where we're going to support the intermittent fasting and where we're going to actually facilitate the consumption of food to increase metabolic rate. Now you can see there on the left-hand side, we talk more firstly about the behaviors, and this is really starts with, like we said, at the beginning, programming, whether it's into your watch or into your phone, what the start of the day is going to be and what the end of the day is going to be. This ultimately determines then that period that you've got the 12-hour period of food consumption, the 12-hour period where you're effectively intermittent fasting. Work out what that is for you. Everyone's different with their day jobs. It can obviously even change through the week, weekend to weekday, but set it up in your calendar. Again, best on phone and watch for a while. It doesn't have to be overly intrusive, but several weeks of this will get you back into that routine. So you can see here with the foods, like I said, you want to program the water and then you want to program the proteins. Now you can mix the order here between taking a whey protein like a revival shake, whether that's in the morning, whether it's at lunchtime, whatever. You decide how the order runs, but for each meal, thinking about that 500 ml of water and then a protein. And whether that's eggs, whether that's meats, whether that's the whey, you choose when to order this up. But what's important is the 3 times a day over and above your standard water intake. Take in these 3 hits of water. As I said, 30 minutes before the meal is best, and then take on your proteins. And then lastly, programming your accelerators. At the start of the day, good way to get in the green tea, the catechins right at the beginning. And then we want to start as we get into either prior to our strength training or prior to our cardio or during the workout using the primed caffeine input. That's really going to give you your second caffeine hit for the day. You've already had one of your capations that come out of the green tea. And then we'll get into either mid-morning or during lunch, the use of coffee. Where any of these meals, you can insert the chili, whether that, as I said, in your shake in the morning or the lunch or the dinner. And then the afternoon, again, one more hit of the catechins or the capations, basically out of, as I say, a white tea or a decaf green tea. All of that together is going to give you the number of caffeine hits. It's going to give you several hits of the flavonols out of the green or the white tea. And then you've already programmed in your water, your proteins, and your behaviors. So put this on the wall, build it into your phone, program it into your system. It'll only take a few weeks to get this in a routine for you, but all of those things together is going to put you on a good stead for 2024 to uplift your metabolic rate, get back into a sound and efficient fat oxidation system. The other way to do it, come and join one of these 50 milers. That'll certainly boot up your metabolism. If you're not so hung up on the diet or the routine of behaviors, you can do a 50 miler. Hopefully that was fun and it'll help out. If you've got any questions, by all means, send them into S-Fuels. We're happy to do some support one-on-one. We're doing it with a ton of athletes and coaches. Till next time, thanks again for joining and all the best for 2024. Go.